what had been their children remembered me, Tante Marlene, and they remember the songs I taught them. I remember I taught them, put your right hand in, put your left hand in, you turn around and do the hanky panky, hokey pokey, not the hanky panky, you do the hokey pokey. Right.
So you were in Seoul for 12 years, and then from there you took a teaching job in Egypt. And you told me that going to Egypt was like a homecoming. What does that mean?
Where I was teaching was the American University in Cairo, and it was a homecoming because while I was living in France, I had met through friends, mutual friends, at a social party. I had met my future husband, who is of Yemeni heritage, but born in Cairo. When we started dating, within the first year, I spent a summer, not a summer, but a French vacation 1 month in Cairo, and things were looking pretty serious. So I wanted to learn Arabic. So I took private lessons at the American University in Cairo. So my experience with AUC was that summer when I was totally in love, young love, thinking, this could be my life. And he was a graduate of AUC, my future ex-husband. And I'd heard a lot about it. I mean, it's a very famous institution in Egypt. Plus, then eventually we did get married, and he did take a job in Saudi Arabia, and I followed him to Saudi Arabia. And from Saudi Arabia, we several times went to Egypt. 25 or 30 people in his family lived in Jeddah, and they were also of Egyptian background, but living in Saudi Arabia at the time. And then they've eventually moved back to Egypt. So when I went back to Egypt to be employed, it was like a homecoming, because a lot of these people that I'd known well as children in Saudi Arabia now were adults with their own families. I just walked into a family network, as well as I walked into AUC not as a novice Arabic language learner, kind of in love with my future husband. I walked in as a professor. That's why it was a homecoming.
So when you went back there as a professor, though, you were no longer a part of that family. You're no longer married.
But we didn't sever relations. On the contrary, I went to visit them at least once a week. I mean, later it got a little bit less frequent, but in the beginning I saw them every week, and they completely embraced me. They always loved me, what had been their children remembered me, Tante Marlene, and they remember the songs I taught them.
What are your favorite things that if somebody wanted to learn a little bit about Cairo or about Egypt?
The obvious is to look into Egyptology, and they're making a lot of new discoveries. But in terms of the social fabric, there's an author who's written a lot of different articles and books. Her name is Diane Singerman, and she's written a book, Cairo Cosmopolitan, and then there's another one called Cairo Contested. And both of these books are edited by Diane Singerman, and she has multiple authors that contributed different aspects: cafe culture, marriage culture, the sociology of the poor classes, Upper Egypt versus the urban Egypt, this kind of thing. And then I have a colleague. She was my colleague at American University in Cairo. People that are interested in reading fiction. Her name is Reem Bassiouni. That's with a double S in there. And Reem is a linguist. She's a practicing working professor of linguistics, but at the same time, she's an author, and she's won lots of prizes. Some of her books have been translated into English. The first one, or one of the famous ones, is The Pistachio Seller. People love her books. Not all of the recent ones have been translated to English, but several of the earlier ones have already been translated to English. Yeah, she writes in Egyptian. She writes in Arabic, sometimes she's originally from Alexandria, so sometimes she uses Alexandrian dialect. And the people that read her originally in Arabic just love her use of dialect, between Cairo dialect and Alexandria dialect, because she's a sociolinguist by training. She captures the essence, the feeling of the dialects. The English, of course, loses a bit of that dialect's impact, but she's a currently very popular fiction writer. I mean, and there's Naguib Mahfouz, who is a Nobel Prize winner. I mean, if you look for Egyptian literature, there is a lot that's been translated to English. But for something very recent, that Reem has new books coming out, 1 or 2 books a year of these fiction books.
And so now you're in Kazakhstan. What university are you at?
It's called Nazarbayev University. Nazarbayev is the name of the founding. He's kind of the George Washington of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan was one of the Soviet republics, and he is of Kazakh heritage and had been a functionary in the Soviet system. Anyway, he became the founding president of the Republic of Kazakhstan.
What a different place from Hawaii and Seoul and Cairo. And I know you said Russian was not a language that you knew of the many languages you speak. What was it like to come into this place?
So linguistically speaking, I had thought, or I had the minimal information that I had gotten, I thought it was something like Hawaiian, perhaps like a language of a particular generation that was dying out. And I heard that they were promoting the Kazakh language, thinking that it was going to be kind of like the Hawaiian language that was pretty seriously endangered, even though there's the Punana Leo and everything. But when I got there, I found that it's being used in families. It's being used actually by the government. To be a functionary of the government, to be a civil servant, you have to be able to pass a language exam in both Russian and Kazakh. Linguistically, it's definitely a challenge to be living in Kazakhstan because, as you just said, I didn't speak Russian before. I mean, I knew words that maybe any American, tovarish, izvestia, do svidaniya, privyet, I knew a few words, spasiba, right? Thank you. But I didn't speak Russian really at all. And then I definitely didn't know anything about Kazakh. It turns out that Kazakh is a Turkic language and it has a similar linguistic structure of Korean. Kazakh being a Turkic language, has a lot of borrowings from Turkish, and then Arabic has been borrowed into Turkish, and Turkish has been borrowed into Arabic. So there's quite a few vocabulary items that I recognize from Arabic, but the language structure is different. So linguistically, it's been a challenge, and I teach at this English medium university. All the students speak fluent English. All the professors speak English, even if they are Russian speakers natively. Classes are conducted in English. So within the university, I don't have much opportunity to use Russian. But as soon as you get off the university campus, you need Russian. Or now there is, with the things going on internationally with the war with Ukraine, the Kazakhs are they're being stronger advocates of the establishment and the use of Kazakh, and trying to say we as Kazakhs need to, it's the official language policy. The official language policy of the country is that everyone should be trilingual by the year 2050, trilingual in Russian, Kazakh, and English. Kazakh, the national language, Russian, the language of communication with former Soviet areas, and English for international communication. But everybody uses Google. They have their phone. As soon as they see a foreign face, they start Googling and say, okay, here, speak to my phone. And then they go, okay. And then they translate. I don't like it when they just look at me and stick the phone in my face, because let me try to use my Russian. And if we can't get anywhere, then we'll rely on it. So some people don't even want to try. They can note. And some people, because I get, well, sometimes I may look obvious, but sometimes people take me for a Russian, like in the street, they'll say, and they'll ask me, where's the bus? Or, they'll just speak to me because I could be a Russian person, depending on what I'm wearing that day. And especially in the winter when you're all bundled up and everybody looks the same, because it gets very cold in Kazakhstan. It gets down to -30, -35, -40. So we're pretty bundled up in the winter. Google Translate, I have to say, at least it is communication, and you can still laugh and smile and still have, it's mediated through this device. And then sometimes it's just what we call transactional conversation. Like, I need to buy shampoo, what shampoo is good, or I want to buy a dress size 40, whatever it is. But sometimes you can have fun, and people do have relationships with Google Translate. I don't mean they have relationships with the device, but I mean using the device can have relationships.
Oh, that's interesting. How long have you been there now?
5 years.
5 years. And how has the transition been? It's a place where you were not familiar with the language. It gets down to -1,000. It's a big change from Hawaii and Seoul and Egypt
Cairo. I have to say, because of the fact that we live on campus, we're an English medium university, we're very much self-contained. We have on-campus grocery store, beauty parlor, workout gym. It's a very, very beautiful campus with excellent facilities. Internet is fantastic. Everybody once in a while gets an electrical outage, but basically internet is fantastic. So I spend a lot of time on campus, and I do make an effort to make friends out in the general community. My first breakthrough in the local community was with the deaf people locally, because I'm this American. I still don't sign that much Russian Sign Language, but at least I'm a signer. So I've had these friends. I'm like kind of a circle of friends in the local deaf community. I met one by one, and one person leads to another. So I have a small group of, deaf friends that I talk with. And then slowly, I'm making friends. Like sometimes you meet a lady on the bus and she says, oh, you're a foreigner. Can you teach me English? I said, no. I'm so busy. I don't have time to teach you English, but if you have some English, I want to learn Russian. We can meet for coffee and do an exchange. So I have 2 or 3 friends that I do kind of language exchange and become friends, get invited to their house. But it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Yeah, it's a little bit more isolating because I don't speak the language fluently. whereas I could manage anything, in France or in Egypt, pretty much anything, not everything, but I can handle myself well in Arabic in Egypt. So anyway, I'm still exploring Kazakhstan. I'm not ready to leave, and I still have languages to conquer.
Are you trying to do that? Are you learning
Yeah,
both?
yeah. I always have something in case you get stuck somewhere. I always have a little language, 2 or 3 pages out of a language textbook for Russian. And then this last year, we had a really fun thing. The International Student Association decided, because it's very hard to have any Kazakh classes. Russian, there's a lot of Russian classes all over the world, a lot of Russian texts, but there aren't that many textbooks to learn Kazakh. So this International Student Association decided to recruit undergraduate students, and they auditioned them and had them do a lesson plan and teach a lesson. And they, out of a couple dozen applicants, they picked 3 or 4 that could teach Russian and Kazakh, and they give free lessons to the faculty. So it's been really lots of fun to meet faculty from different departments. Like, I'm in social humanities, and meet people from engineering, robotics, something else. And these students that are absolutely gifted language teachers. I had 5 days a week. I had language classes, 2 or 3 days a week for each language. So I've been doing
Oh,
that.
that's great.
Yeah. And hopefully they're going to
Yeah.
get started as soon as classes start in the fall again.
What would you recommend if somebody wanted to learn a little bit more about Kazakhstan?
There's a famous, apparently he's becoming quite worldwide famous. His name is Dimash. He has a big, long last name, but his stage name is Dimash, Dimash. He's won prizes everywhere.
What kind of music?
Sometimes it's love songs, kind of gentle, I guess you could say, but I think he does some rock style music, but some of his really popular ones are love songs, and sometimes he sings in Kazakh and you wouldn't understand the words, but people like the rhythms and the melodic content, even if they don't know the words. And I have a book, it's written by a woman named Paula Michaels, and the book is called Curative Powers, and I think the subtitle is something like The Soviet Powers, Medicine and Empire in Stalin's Central Asia. And I found this book absolutely amazing. It's very specific about how the Soviets, or Stalin, the Soviets in the 30s and 40s introduced modern, at that time, whatever was modern, medical practice to the nomads of the steppe. And it's absolutely fascinating. And it's extremely well written. It's like an anthropological book. It's not just about medical practices. And then there's one book that was the first book I read. It was the first one that was easily accessible. See this, it's called Apples Are from Kazakhstan. And did you know apples and tulips originated in Kazakhstan? And this particular book, it's written by a journalist. He's quite famous for some other work that he did. And then for some reason, he got interested in Kazakhstan, I think, in the early 2000s. I think he did this big trip around Kazakhstan and had all these adventures. Each chapter is kind of a different aspect of Kazakh culture. And it's got 2 names because it was reissued. Apples Are from Kazakhstan is the first title. And then In Search of Kazakhstan. But it's the same book. It's by the same author. Christopher Robbins. Double B.
Thanks for listening to Midlife Dialogues. Next week, Marilyn talks about the philosophy she lives by, which has kept her happily living all over the world and making really dear friends everywhere she goes. See you next time.